So the PS5 Pro was announced. You know what that means? It's time for a new round of bullshit console say. So the PS5 Pro, I'm not gonna talk about the specs and stuff of that. What we're gonna do today is we're gonna talk about whether or not you can build a PC that is on the same level as the PS5 Pro. And you know what? This is nothing new. Every single time a console comes out or gets an upgrade or a mid-cycle refresh or whatever, there's the whole like, it's gonna do the most amazing thing it could do that a PC can't do, even though it's PC parts inside of it. Today we're gonna use our friends at Micro Center to see how well we can come to trying to match the specs of the PS5 Pro while also trying to decipher what those specs really are, because they didn't actually say. They gave percentage uplifts and stuff. So we've used our best big brains, which together in this room, 3 of us equal at least 1 human brain, to try and determine what those specs actually are. So when it comes to the main spec of the PS5 Pro, the one that everyone cares about is gonna be the GPU. Now we know that the CPU and the GPU are both AMD. AMD's had that contract for like generations now of the PlayStation and the Xbox, technically for a while there. We knew the original PS5 non-Pro had 36 CUs or compute units. So they said there's a 67% uplift in the amount of compute units. So instead of just coming out and saying it has 60 CUs, they said 67%, because I think 67 is bigger than 60, at least last time I checked. And that's a bigger number that sounds interesting to say, 67%. So when it comes to storage, it's kind of crazy. They got 2 terabytes of Gen 4 PCIe NVMe storage in there. So very fast storage. And then the CPU is still Zen 2 architecture, which by PC standards today is pretty freaking old. But I think that's because, you know, obviously the way the hardware is designed and optimized, it's offloading everything to the GPU essentially anyway once the game loads. So that's why GPU is a priority when it comes to the consoles. But anyway, it's a slightly downclocked 3700X when we take a look at the specs and the frequencies and all that sort of stuff. So it's interesting that it's still kind of a older, I mean, we're in Zen 5 now. Right? Zen 2? That's because AMD probably had so many of these dies still laying around, it was no problem to just ship them in bulk. Now, one thing to talk about when it comes to the specs of the CPU and GPU though, is the fact that they are using unified RAM. So what that means is both the CPU and the GPU have access to the same GDDR6. So unlike APUs, where the die on the substrate for the CPU has access to the system memory for the graphics, which is much slower than GDDR. Like DDR is much slower than GDDR. And so for the CPU having access to the GDDR6 on the, I'm not even gonna say on the card, because it's not on a card, it's just one PCB, kind of like a laptop. That's actually an uplift for the CPU, especially since we know Zen 2 still takes a huge advantage of, and especially because the way the Infinity Fabric was designed back in Zen 2, takes a huge advantage, performance uplift when it comes to fast RAM. So that's actually a good thing for the CPU. With that said, we have a $700 price point to try and deal with. So console fanboys are all pissed off that the price went up from what, $500-ish to $700? And let's not forget how expensive components are right now. So it's the one thing that's like, hey, console fans, welcome to our world. For once. And when I say our world, I mean the exorbitant prices that the PC genre has just become sort of accustomed to over the last 4 years. So here's what we're gonna do. We are using our friends at Micro Center, and which is our local Tustin store. We're gonna see what kind of PC part list we can come up with using their configurator to see if we can come anywhere close to the specs on this, and maybe we'll build it. All right, so I'm gonna use Micro Center's custom PC builder. So it's just a configurator, and it's cool because of the fact that it allows you to put parts in there, and it will check compatibility for you too. So if you picked like, let's say a 4080 Strix, which is a really long card, and you're like, I wanna put it in this micro ATX case, it kinda knows it ain't gonna fit, so it will filter out things that are not compatible. So if you were to select a certain large GPU, then only cases that are compatible would show up and all that, because it knows the length of the card and the clearances in the cases. It actually does a lot of the guesswork for you, so that you don't have to worry about getting parts that are incompatible, which is kinda nice. So I'm gonna start right here with bundles. It is impossible to match Micro Center's bundle deals. So already right there, we have to put a little bit of an asterisk on this video saying, if it wasn't for the bundles, we probably would not be able to get anywhere near the PS5 Pro's $700 price. I'm gonna say this right now, this is a challenge. $700 for the specs that are in it is gonna be very, very difficult to even achieve, let alone come close to. So I'm curious to see how close we can really get here. The other reason why they can do it at $700 is the fact that because they have one PCB that everything gets put on is what makes it even close to being affordable for them to do because they're not having to buy completed components from manufacturers individually, which is what we're having to do here. We have to buy a completed CPU, which is the die and the substrate and the pins and the whole mechanism, right? We have to buy the motherboard, again, which is another company that had put in the cost to tool and manufacture the motherboard. Same thing with the SSD, same thing with the graphics card, the power supply, the case. Every single one of those companies need their profit built into the pricing. So that's why Sony can even come close to doing it for, I think, break-even price at this point. Sony's been known to take hits on the cost of consoles because they make money on the game sales. That's where they want to make their money, but I think Sony now is like, you know what, we're done losing money on consoles. Let's at least try and break even, which is what the $700 price point is more than likely doing. If they can get that from less suppliers, there's more room for profit for the suppliers, which means better deals for Sony. So I want to put that discussion out there real quick because there's so much ignorant discussion taking place online of people that just have no fucking clue how it works, trying to spew out garbage as fact. So we're just gonna go ahead and, no, I didn't stop anyone from saying anything, but I feel better for saying it. I have just sorted the bundles by lowest price first. And this is why we're gonna go with this, an Intel system. Wait, before you start typing, oh my God, Jay's an Intel shill, it's a 12th gen. 12th gen's fine, okay? I may or may not have used 12th gen in Miami as well. We get a 12600KF, which as you know, does not have an iGPU built into it. We get a Z790 MSI motherboard, which is overkill. I would have loved to be able to save more money by letting it bundle it with like a B650 or something like that, but they don't have any of those. It's just like all Z790. And we get 16 gigabytes of the G.Skill Ripjaws memory. So it's actually $259.99 for that bundle. So once I put that in the configurator, look at what it does to the price. It brings the CPU to $90. Let's do this real quick. Let's see what it costs on Amazon. 140 bucks. Even their online bundle from Micro Center on Amazon is more expensive than the bundle you get in store, and it doesn't include RAM. So you can see why I say there's an asterisk, because unless you live near one of their 27 Micro Centers, with their latest one just opened in Miami, and Santa Clara, California coming later this year, which I'm looking forward to, another store in California. It's actually a store they used to have that they took away, and they're like, you know what, let's put it back. And they did. So anyway, the motherboard is Z790 Pro from MSI, $135, marked down from $209. And then RAM, we saved $5 on the RAM. We went from $39 to $34. It's DDR4 3200. So this is where we're sort of like hurting ourselves a little bit here, is because of the fact that we are being reduced to DDR4, and it's the only way it's gonna be affordable. So that's the downside, because of the fact that, remember, Intel 1700, LGA 1700 boards can be DDR4 or DDR5. Going DDR5 makes it a bit more expensive to try and do this. So we have to take some hit on the DDR4, unfortunately, but that's the only way we can make this work. Before we go to video card, we need to get some other stuff in our cart to see what we're left with for graphics. So for instance, if I sort our M.2s by lowest price, we cannot do a 2 terabyte drive and still be at the $700 budget. We cannot do that, that's impossible. So we're gonna have to stick to a 1 terabyte drive and really lean on the fact that we can upgrade it in the future. Yes, so can the PS5 and PS5 Pro more than likely, but this is just, unfortunately, the drawbacks of building a PC and each one of these companies having to bake in profit in an individual part basis means that we have to be sticking with a 1 terabyte drive. I don't want to go Gen 3. I want to at least take advantage of some of the faster drive speed that's available. So we're gonna go with the Inland QN450 1 terabyte SSD. It's a 3D QLC NAND PCIe Gen 4x4. It's a 2280, which is a standard length drive, $65.99. We could have saved money and gone all like down to the $59.99 right here, but as you can see, that's a Gen 3. So I understand that this is a QLC. Some people may or may not like that. That's just what we're going with. The nice thing is you can always upgrade your drive later if you want. Okay, we need a case. So this is one of those sort by lowest price first. Actually, this whole build has been this way. But sort by lowest price first. The Thermaltake V100 ATX, I don't believe comes with any fans. That was my biggest problem with it. It's a pretty standard case, no side panel or anything, but for $44.99, I feel like going with the $5 more expensive Inland X1, which comes with 4 fans pre-installed. Yes, they're RGB puke, but there's 4 fans in there. So, and we know it'll fit all of our parts in there, and it fits a full ATX board, so we're not stuck on go like micro ATX or anything like that. So we're gonna go with that. Not just because it's an MSI, and it's not because it's a Micro Center sponsored video, it's literally because it's the first case that seems like has a value at 49 bucks with the extra fans that we're gonna need. And that brings our total currently to $375.95, which is like the price we saw on Amazon over here for just a motherboard and CPU for the same thing from Micro Center, nonetheless. So you can see why this is an insane deal, because this includes a case and storage and RAM and motherboard and CPU, and we're at $375. I'm not leaving the builder. You're leaving the builder. You're drunk. Okay, so we need a power supply. There's a power spec 500 watt. I'd like to build in a little bit of headroom to grow with the system in the future, which is something you can't do on PlayStation. You can't upgrade components or parts later. So I don't want us to be shoehorned into a 500 watt power supply. I think 650 is gonna be the much better option for us here. So for $49.99, we have a power spec 650 watt 80 plus bronze. I know power spec, again, is the in-house brand for Micro Center. I'm comfortable with that because if you bought it at a Micro Center, hopefully that means you live close enough to one to where if it ever did something weird, you can bring it back to Micro Center. Because Micro Center will directly warranty this stuff in-house because it's their stuff. So instead of having to do G-Skill where you have to like RMA it and send it off somewhere, I'm more comfortable with the idea of driving for us the 45 minutes to Micro Center if something were to happen to this power supply. I haven't used power spec in a build of mine, but I've talked to a lot of people who have and they're happy with it. So we're gonna roll the dice on that one. What's left? Heatsink. We gotta cool our CPU. 12600 KF does not come with a box cooler, which would have been nice to have to save the 20 bucks, but I'm gonna tell you right now, 20 bucks is definitely 20 bucks in this build. So we're gonna go with the Cooler Master Hyper 212 Spectrum V3. It's only $20. Add that to our cart and we're at $445.95. So that essentially leaves us $255 for a GPU. You can see the problem now, right? Because a 60 CU GPU puts it at approximately an RX 6800. Now there's some other stuff I want to address real quick. A 60 CU GPU from AMD puts it at about a 6800. The amount of nonsense I'm hearing about the Pro is going to be able to do 8K 60, which even a 4090 can't do, which you're right, a 4090 cannot comfortably do 8K 60 even with upscaling. Neither can the 7900 XTX, which is a 96 CU. So stop it. Stop making yourself look stupid, please. Every time you vomit that nonsense, you make yourself look like a complete moron. If an AMD 96 CU GPU can't do 8K 60, what makes you think their 60 CU one can? I'll tell you, upscaling. By the way, push 1 in comments if you actually have an 8K TV, because that means you'd then be playing on your TV, which no PC gamer should really be doing, even if it is like an LG OLED with gaming mode. If you can afford an 8K TV, you're not gonna be building this PC. You're gonna be building a very high-end PC, okay? Assuming, making an ass out of me and me, okay, at this point. I'm gonna get back on topic here. I'm gonna move on to the GPU now. We're left with $255, and I know what GPU I'm gonna go with because we already did some research on this. If we go to Tech Power Up, RX 6800, so you can see right here it has 60 CUs, okay? So 6800 has 60 CUs, and we can use that as our comparison target. So now if we look at the relative performance, there's our highlighted performance right there. We can find the stuff that's near it. So a 7700 XT is 98% of the relative performance of the 6800. A 4070 is 111%. We know 4070 is nowhere near our budget because that would almost be the entire budget going to just the graphics card. But if we look down here, we can see we've got a 6750 XT at 85% of it and a 3060 Ti at 77% of it. Now here's the problem. If I put the 7600 XT in here, it's gonna put us at $765.94. Now we're gonna have a little bit of an asterisk on this, and I'm gonna tell you what, I'm not using this card. The PS5 Pro does not include a stand. This thing is standing on right now, not included. It's 30 bucks if you want one. Sony also charges 80 bucks if you want the Blu-ray player, or the Blu-ray drive. We're not putting a Blu-ray player or a drive in this PC, so we're not using the 80 bucks to compare. But our PC comes with its own stand. It's called a case. And all 4 feet are included. They're not extra cost. They're not pulling an Apple model where we have to charge more for it. Or if you want the casters for the Pro, it's like $500 for the casters. Stupid like that. So we are gonna allow ourselves the $30. I think we probably won't even need it, to be honest, but the $30 for the stand. That still brings us $35 technically over budget. Now I think the 6750 XT would kind of have been the more comparable card to use, because obviously a 6800, where's my card? A 6800 is not doable. It is just far too expensive. So if I go ahead and search for 6800 XT right now, or excuse me, 6800 non-XT, if I select that one, then we're gonna be near $800. And the other thing we don't have in this cart either, $805. We also don't have an operating system in here. The Sony comes with one, but it's nothing but like, it's like if Steam Big Picture came on a PC and that's all you got, right? So the operating system is gonna be something that's kind of on you. Now what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna remove the 6800 Speedster, which at that point would have made this so I think what you can see right now, with the exception of the storage, we can build a PlayStation 5 Pro for $100 more than the cost of it. But I don't wanna have that asterisk saying we went $100 over. They do have a card that I think will work just fine for this. That is the 3060 Ti at $249, and it's a Founders Edition card. I think I would rather have NVIDIA's DLSS upscaler, which is superior to FSR, in this build. And I think then we would get realistic, playable 100-ish FPS in many titles with DLSS set to like quality or balanced, with the 3060 Ti in 1440p, not 4K. Because even the PlayStation 5, when you do 4K, it goes down to like 30 FPS on many of these games. I have a feeling with the 6800 CU card in the PlayStation 5 Pro, you're probably gonna get a lot of titles that are also still 4K 30, maybe some that are 4K 60, depending on how hard that engine is to run. So now we're at $695.94. So we're $5 under. That 35 extra bucks we have now, go to some CD key site and get your Windows key if you wanna argue at me that I didn't include an OS, okay? Or just go pirate it. I don't care. It's not my job to determine whether or not you're getting it from a legal source. It's up to you to determine whether or not you're putting your system at risk by buying pirated software or downloading it or whatever. That's on you. Hardware-wise, this is what we got. So let's go get it. And here it is. So every single part right there, $695. It was $749 after tax. We didn't include tax because guess what? It'd be the same, actually it'd be $5 more for the PS5 Pro, even though that's not a Pro, I'm pointing to it because it kind of looks the same. It has tax too. So both of them $700 before tax, it's the same after. Actually, it looks pretty good. I'm a little surprised at how good this turned out. Typically when you try and do this is a fairly budget build, even though it has a 12600KF, a Z790 motherboard, a 3060 Ti, RGB fans that are Molex and not really RGB. They just have individual LED colors in there that don't move, and they're Molex. Didn't know that when I bought it, but whatever. It looks good. The Hyper 212, forgot how good this cooler was. In fact, let's demonstrate that real quick. I got Hardware Monitor open right now, or HW Info, excuse me. So you can see our P cores and E cores. So if we go ahead, and I'm using the thermal paste that came with it, I didn't even use zip ties. I was that dedicated to the craft of sticking to the budget that all I used were the twist ties that came off all the power supply cables on the back to twist tie everything up. There's really not a lot of room for cable management, by the way. It's not the most premium feeling build, like the case itself for 49 bucks or whatever it cost. It is made by Montech, by the way. So the Inland case, X1, is a Montech case. There was a collaboration, obviously, between Inland and Montech. Anyway, enough chatting. Let's go ahead and take a look at our score and our temperature in Cinebench R23. And I'm looking for package temp right here. Here's package, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63. The max it spiked even for a moment was 70, there's 68. So I have enough headroom if I wanted, even with the Hyper 212, I could go into the BIOS and probably enable a sync all core or add some additional thermal velocity boost or something to it that would allow it to go even higher, which you can't do with your PlayStation. You cannot overclock your PlayStation. A lot of people wouldn't do that anyway. I don't even think I enabled XMP on the RAM now that I think about it. I should probably go ahead and reboot and do that. This is literally from the first boot. There's a 17,244 if you want to compare it to your PlayStation at home. Oh, oops, you can't do that. There we go. All I did was enable XMP. And we're gonna go ahead and do Cyberpunk for this test, and here's why. Digital Foundry did a pretty good video. Well, their videos are all pretty in-depth and very scientific. They have their science licenses, okay? They were talking about the PS5, and obviously we have to speculate as to what the PS5 Pro is gonna be capable of. If, in Cyberpunk, if you don't have ray tracing on, you get 1440p 60. But the moment you turn on ray tracing, you get 1440p 30. It doesn't matter if you're on a 4K TV. Just because it's filling out your 4K TV does not mean it's playing at 4K resolution. That's what so many people get wrong. It's not, it's 1440p. So what I'm gonna see right now is what we get without having a frame rate limiter on and playing around with our DLSS settings, because that's a feature we just paid for with PC, and I'm certainly not gonna admit that because it's a feature we paid for. We're gonna see what kind of FPS we get with 1440p. We're assuming probably medium settings. We don't know exactly what the settings are because they're not exactly the same for console and PC. There's things that are missing from the console menu. So we're gonna go medium, 1440p, and then non-ray tracing. I know we're gonna be above 60 FPS, I hope, really. And then we're gonna turn on ray tracing and see if we go above 30. I'm gonna speculate that with the newer hardware in the Pro, you're probably gonna get 1440p 60 FPS ray tracing on. That's probably the only major difference you're gonna see in terms of like settings and FPS limiters. We have to speculate until we get our hands on one to really see what's happening there. With that said, let's launch it.
Let's launch over it.
So with all that said, let's talk about how they're getting the quote unquote 4K resolutions in console. So we're at 1440p, no upscaling, I just mentioned that. In console, they're doing 1440p as a base res, FSR'd up to 1800p, and then a standard scale again to 4K. So your 4K game is 1800p. So it's not really 4K. And they're gonna be doing the same thing for quote unquote 8K on the Pro. But look at the FPS, it is so consistent. 77, 78, 79, 75. It looks great too. Now let's go crash. Let's go ahead now and see what happens if we go to, I'm just curious, what is the native 4K gaming is gonna be like? It's gonna be terrible. Like 3060 Ti is not intended for 4K gaming, but it's still, I think, higher than console will get you, 35 FPS. So let's now turn on resolution scaling, DLSS. We'll go to performance, 89 FPS. In quote unquote 4K DLSS performance. So it's really gonna be like back down to like 1440p-ish. I don't remember the scaling numbers exactly, but look, we have 4K set with DLSS on, and we're getting more FPS than we were in 1440p native res. This is why DLSS is awesome. Now FSR obviously does a similar thing, but we all know that DLSS is a bit more mature when it comes to the way that it's using its AI upscaler. And this, to me, still looks better right now than 1440p base res did because it's a 4K panel that we're on right now. Now, turning on ray tracing on console, the only thing you get is local shadows. So as you can see on PC, we get this ray trace reflections, we get sun shadows, we get ray trace lighting, we get path tracing. So anyway, if we go ahead and just turn on local shadows to kind of mimic console, 72. This is actually really, really good looking. It just looks better than it would have on console too, that's for sure. And let's not forget, this costs the same as that with the Pro on it. DLSS, you know, I'm gonna go balanced. What does balance do real quick to this? Okay, very little effect in terms of hitting FPS, but giving us a little bit more sharpness even, because performance is a lower base res that we upscale up to. So we just upped it one notch on the base resolution. So we're already over 60 FPS target here in 4K. Ray tracing on. Let's go ahead and turn on all the rays. How about ray trace reflections? Sure. That's where you take the big hit, is reflections. And that's why you don't get it on console. So this is now kind of a mess. Okay, I think it's safe to say, for the same cost of a PlayStation Pro, we can build a PC that will absolutely destroy a PlayStation, but the PlayStation's $500. It's $200 cheaper than this. We will circle back with this same build. I will keep it together. I will not touch it. We will see, once we get a PlayStation Pro in hand, how they're after me. It's the cops.
It's the Sony police.
It's the cops! So, like I said, we will circle back with the PlayStation 5 Pro, and once Digital Foundry kind of does their stuff, so, because we don't have a way of recording the FPS, so Digital Foundry actually captures the signal, and then they use a software to sort of analyze that signal to say how many FPS it's getting. That's how they can give you accurate FPS number in a console. So there you go, guys. As you can see, take it, let's just final thoughts here real quick. One, the major upsell to a computer and the concept of a computer is you can upgrade it. You can say, you know what? It's been a year now. I've got some extra cash I saved up. I can sell this 3060 Ti for a solid 250 bucks, maybe 200 bucks by the time you do that, and get yourself like a 3080. Instant, like double of FPS between a 3060 and a 3080. You could put a different cooler on here if you wanted, but I showed like with this CPU, there's no reason to. The biggest drawback of this exact setup is the DDR4. But as you can see right now, it's not holding us back in games so much. If we were going like 4090, then yeah, we would want all of the CPU performance uplift that we could get, and DDR5 does help with max FPS if the engine is, if the graphics card can push it to the engine limit. But upgradability, and it's a computer. You can do other things on it besides just play games. You can use it as a tool to maybe make money, learn, go to school, work, all sorts of stuff. It's not just a one-trick pony. I guess 1.5 tricks now. I mean, this one has the disc player, but I guess it could be a multimedia player. But you gotta pay 80 extra bucks if you want to play discs. But I guess we all stream now anyway. Who cares about discs? I haven't put a disc in a drive in I don't know how long. There you go. I would say I hope this settles some debate about whether or not you can build a PC for the price of a PlayStation 5 Pro that's worth it. But we all know this hasn't changed any of your minds at all. I know it. You know it. Micro Center knows it. So that's why we're all just gonna stay on our side of the line that we've drawn in the sand, and we're gonna marvel at the fact that I'm actually a little surprised at how well this $700 PC is actually performing. All right, guys, thanks for watching. As always, we'll see you in the next one, even if we don't see you again until we're back with the actual PS5 Pro going head to head.